Welcome. Tonight, we journey to the edge. Not the edge of a map, but the edge of survival. The edge of memory. The edge of something taken and never truly returned. The American frontier has long been told in stories of grit, guns, and glory. Of settlers carving homes out of wilderness. Of brave men and women pushing westward. Of manifest destiny fulfilled beneath open skies. But beneath those stories, beneath the flags and log cabins and names etched into textbooks, was something quieter, harder, and often forgotten. This is not a tale of triumph. It is a tale of cold nights, of hollow hunger, of homes built over bones, and of lives lived in near silence. Tonight we'll walk beside those whose names history blurred. We'll feel the wooden floorboards creak under frost-covered boots. We'll hear the wind howl across empty plains once sacred to others. We'll sit in cabins made of felled trees and listen to the slow ticking of time in a world full of struggle. This is the pain of the frontier, the grief of survival, the ache of building on ground that never truly welcomed you. So lie back, let the noise of the modern world drift away, and together, we'll wander into the deep woods, past the last trail, to a land where only memory remains. Imagine waking before the sun, not from alarm, but from cold. The kind of cold that stiffens your joints before you open your eyes. The kind that lives in the wood, that slips beneath doors, that settles into your lungs. You pull the blanket tighter. A quilt, thin and worn, stitched by hands that no longer move. Next to you, someone coughs. A child, perhaps, or an aging father. The fire has died to embers. You can see your breath. There is no insulation. It's only logs, stacked and notched, leaky with wind, their sap long frozen. This is your home, a cabin on the edge, not a storybook homestead, not a postcard. Just four walls, a door. And the promise that if you work and don't die, you might see spring. You rise and place your feet on the floor. It is packed dirt. It bites. Your boots are stiff, still damp from yesterday's snow. You wince as you push them on. There is no privacy.
Ow!
No room for modesty. 3 generations sleep in this space. Mothers, sons, aunts, boarders. Maybe a drifter taken in for winter. You reach for the axe. The day begins with wood. It always does. Outside, trees loom, frosted and still. Snow clings to branches like thick ash. The trail to the stream is crusted with ice. Each step crunches, a sound you feel in your bones. You chop. You carry. Your hands burn from the cold, then go numb, then ache again. Inside, the fire is fed. Smoke curls along the ceiling before finding the crooked chimney. Porridge simmers, thin, plain, made with last fall's oats and a pinch of salt. If you're lucky, a bit of bacon fat. If you're not, just water and grain. You eat from a tin bowl. You share a spoon. No one speaks. The baby fusses. Someone tends her. A grandmother sways, singing softly, a lullaby once heard in a far-off place. Virginia, maybe. Or Ireland. The day rolls on in tasks. You patch a roof shingle with a scrap of bark. You tighten the door latch. You dig a latrine trench deeper into the frost. A neighbor passes, on foot, not horseback. He nods. You nod. No one expects more. At midday, the sun is pale and low. It casts no warmth, just shadow. Inside, your younger brother mends a trap. You boil a rabbit, bones and all. There'll be no bread. The flour's gone. And the next sack won't come until the river thaws. You split logs for kindling. You sew a tear in your coat with sinew and a rusty needle. Your fingertips bleed. Keep going. At nightfall, you light a tallow candle. Smoke is bitter. It's light, small. You sit by the fire. Someone reads a torn Bible aloud. A page is missing. No one minds. Outside, a wolf howls, far off, then closer. You listen, not with fear, but with respect. You sleep on straw, a coat for a pillow. Boots near the fire to keep from freezing. You close your eyes. The wind pushes against the wall. Slow, steady pressure. It groans like bones in a coffin. You dream of spring, but not with hope, only with habit, because here, on the edge of what they called civilization, you do not think of tomorrow. You think of next breath, next fire, next thaw. This is the life most will never remember. Not the homesteader in textbooks. Not the rugged frontiersman in myth, but the quiet builder. The silent endurer, whose back held up the roof, and whose name was never carved in stone. Imagine, you are walking west. It is spring. The year is 1846, and the horizon stretches forever, full of promise and emptiness. You are part of a wagon train, a long ribbon of hope stretched across dirt and rock and dust. Children ride beside oxen, mothers hang drying cloth over the back of wooden carts. Fathers walk beside wheels, boots split, eyes fixed forward. There are 87 of you. You are strangers and kin, farmers and carpenters, newlyweds and elders, and together you are headed toward California, toward a dream. But this journey is not a story of triumph. It is a quiet march toward tragedy. This is the story of the Donner Party, and it begins, as all things on the frontier do, with a decision. In July, the group chooses a shortcut, the Hastings Cutoff. A trail promised to be quicker, shorter, easier, but it is none of those things. Instead, the wagons crawl over steep hills, through dry, broken salt flats. Oxen die, wheels crack, tempers fray. You press on. In October, snow begins to fall. The sky grows low, the air grows still. The Sierra Nevada mountains rise ahead, beautiful and indifferent. By November, you are trapped. The passes fill with snow. Deep, heavy, immovable. The wagons are pulled into makeshift camps. Logs are dragged together. Shelters are built barely, and then the waiting begins. Food runs out quickly. The animals gone. The flour used. Even the leather. Chewed, boiled, swallowed. Children cry and sleep. Mothers stare into the fire. Fathers count the days on stripped sticks. Storms come and stay. Some go for help. A group of 15 sets off across the pass, on foot, wrapped in rags and blankets. Only 7 survive. They reach help, but not in time. Back at the camp, the line between life and death begins to blur. The air smells of pine and smoke. And something else? The fire is never left unattended. The children are kept close. You begin to speak less. Do begin to pray less. You begin to sleep with one eye open. When rescue arrives, weeks later, they find 48 survivors, gaunt, silent, hollow-eyed. Some cannot speak. Some refuse to leave. Snowdrifts still cover parts of the camp. Bones are buried beneath them. History would remember the Donner Party for cannibalism. But that is not the full story. The full story is quieter. It is in the days before the hunger, the whispers, the shaking hands, the decision to light another fire, and hope someone sees the smoke. This was not a failure of courage. It was a failure of weather, of guidance, of time. And yet those who lived did not speak of it again. They returned to towns, to farms, to silence. Their children grew. Their names changed. Their story faded. But on those frozen hills beneath the snow, the truth remained. That life on the frontier was not only about the land won, but the lives lost quietly, one breath at a time. The fire crackles, soft and low. You stare into it, and wonder what stories live inside its ash. History doesn't always speak in words. Sometimes it speaks in what is left behind. In broken tools, in rusted nails, quiet graves tucked beneath cottonwoods and willow. Out on the frontier, there were no monuments, no polished stone, just the earth. Today, archaeologists still walk the old trails. They move slowly, gently, as if afraid to wake the past. You find a doll's head, a porcelain shard, white hand-painted, chipped. A button carved from bone, still smooth, still beautiful. A coffin nail, iron bent from frost. Beside it, the faint line of a child's jaw, unmarked, unnamed, but once loved. These fragments tell a story that words forgot. A story of people who built lives at the edge of disappearance, a foundation of a cabin now overgrown. You can still see where the hearth once stood. The stones are blackened, ash long gone, but the soot, the memory of fire remains. Nearby, they find a hand-forged hinge, bent, heavy. It held a door that opened hundreds of times, let in fathers returning from the field, mothers carrying newborns. Strangers, snow. They uncover a tin cup, rusted through. A child's initials scratched into the side. JS, we don't know who JS was, but he once drank from that cup. Probably laughed, cried. Grew hungry, grew cold. Further west in the mountains where the Donner Party waited. The snow preserved more than bones. Buttons, sewn from wood, iron pots with soot still caked to the base. A comb, missing teeth, buried beside the remnants of a frozen shelter. Nothing grand, no treasure. Only the ordinary things that tell of survival. Of mornings begun in silence, nights ended in prayer. Some artifacts are spiritual, cross carved into pine, quartz stone left beside a grave. A small pouch filled with crushed lavender and ash. We don't know who carried them. We only know they mattered. Even the landscape itself is a kind of record. Campsites leave rings of darkened soil. Trails pressed so many times into clay that they remain visible, cut deep like veins through prairie and pine. Some places are whispered about. A hill where no crops ever grew again. A clearing where voices were said to echo when no one stood nearby. The frontier was not just hardship. It was full of ritual, superstition, belief. A lock of hair, tied with twine, buried near the hearth. A doll's eye kept under a pillow for protection. A mirror nailed to a wall. Facing the door, always facing the door. These were not the inventions of fancy. They were shields. Not against bullets or beasts, but against fear, loneliness, the unknown. The past is quiet, but it is not gone. It lingers in the rust, in the ash, in the frost. It reminds us that those who came before were not symbols, not myths. They were people who boiled roots, who sewed coats with trembling fingers, who stood in doorways and watched for wolves. They did not all leave stories, but they left signs. Enough for us to understand their silence, enough to feel them again, in the stillness of night. Not everyone suffered equally, even on the edge of survival. Some lived high. Even in a world of snow, there were warm beds. The American frontier, harsh, raw, and unforgiving, was not a place of true equality. There were those who endured the elements, and those who owned the land they slept warm upon. Tonight, step quietly into those forgotten contrasts. Imagine a cabin. Well-built, well-stocked, the walls lined in fabric and fur. The hearth is generous. The food not extravagant but abundant. Salt pork, dried apples, barrels of flour, coffee, maybe even a bottle of brandy saved for winter nights. The landlord, or perhaps a wealthy settler, sits in a hub-backed chair, wearing imported wool, writing letters by candlelight. His children sleep in separate rooms. His oxen are fed before the cold tightens. He's not evil, but he is removed. Down the road, a family of 6 sleeps beside their livestock. Their boots are stuffed with hay, their hands raw, their coughs deeper each morning. They do not own the land. They rent, or squat, or wait for papers that never come. This wasn't always malicious, but it was a system. Timber barons, rail magnates, speculators. They claimed wide swaths of land, often without stepping foot upon it. Others lived there, clearing trees, digging wells, raising children, but ownership that belonged to someone else. And then came the lawless ones. In the absence of order, men with guns, with gangs, with names whispered after dark, became their own form of government. They took what they wanted, a sack of flour here, a daughter there, a field of corn before the frost. Some styled themselves as protectors, most weren't. The people who truly protected the village were quiet, older, armed with nothing but patience. Justice was rare, courts were far, sheriffs often powerless. You might see the judge ride through once a season, long coat, dusty beard, too many papers in his bag. He would nod, take a cup of coffee, settle 2 disputes, maybe 3, then ride on. The churches offered some help. They too depended on donations from the landowners. Sermons were preached about duty, about the virtue of hard work, about the rewards of obedience. Not everyone had the same Sunday. Even in death, the difference remained. A rich settler's grave might have a stone, a verse, a fence. A poor child's grave, a wooden stake, a name carved in coal, washed away by spring. And yet among the poor, there was community. They shared salt, watched each other's fires, traded songs and spoons and stitched mittens. They built without blueprints. They helped without promises. Because when the river froze, and the wolves came close, and the baby wouldn't stop coughing, no landlord came, only the neighbor. This is the truth rarely written, while some profited. Others survived. That some told the story, and others held it together, quietly, with frozen hands. That pain was not equally distributed, and that on the frontier, power was warm, while poverty stood shivering by the door. The wind outside has quieted. The fire burns low, soft bed of glowing embers. The long journey we've taken together, through snow-drifted cabins, through ruined trails, through the silence of bones and ash and empty bowls, comes to rest here, not in glory, not in victory, but in remembrance. Tonight, you've walked beside settlers whose names you'll never know. You've felt the weight of cold water in your hands, the bite of wind on cracked skin, the hush of hunger behind walls that barely held, and in that stillness, you've seen the frontier not as a myth, but as a quiet, aching reality. You've listened to a fire stoked by trembling fingers. You've sat in a cabin that creaked with grief. You've watched the sun disappear behind the mountains and known that spring was still months away. But more than anything, you felt what they felt. The endurance, the quiet strength, the rhythm of small, necessary acts. The ones that don't make it into textbooks, the ones that built everything. Because while flags were planted and stories were written, it was these people who lived the days, who carried water, who gathered wood, who buried children, and kept going. Their pain was not dramatic. It was not loud. It was not asked for. But it was real, and it mattered. And in remembering them, we remember a part of ourselves, the part that works, and waits, and hopes for the thaw. Rose. So now, as your breath slows, as the world dims, as the past settles like snow on your mind, you may sleep. The fire is low, but safe. You are not alone, not in memory. Good night.